Today we look at the best and worst seasons of NBA superstars' careers. The only stipulation is that their worst season can't be because of an injury. If they missed most of the year for an injury, we probably just won't count it. So let's go. And let's start first with LeBron James. The very best season of LeBron's career was easily 2012 and 13 for the Miami Heat, where he was infamously one vote off of being the league's first ever unanimous MVP. But someone voted for Carmelo Anthony to win. And this was the year the Heat as a whole were just off the charts. A 66-16 record, including a 27-game win streak, LeBron winning MVP and averaging 27, 8, and 7. As for his worst season ever, honestly, he's had a couple on the Lakers already that have been pretty bad, but that was more so the team as a whole and not just him. Personally though, his rookie season would have to take it. It's been the only year of his career that he didn't make the All-Star team. He averaged career lows across the board, obviously because it was his first year. His numbers were still great for a rookie, but his Cavs team also had a bad 35-47 record, of course missing the playoffs. Kobe Bryant's all-time best year, at least on paper, was probably the 2006 season where he was on a tear, because it included him averaging 35 points a game on the year, his 81-point game, his 62 3/4, publicly made things right with Shaq, and brought the Lakers to the playoffs with a terrible roster. Plus, after getting hated on for years, he won over a lot of fans that year for what he did, and the narrative started to shift for Kobe. It is interesting to mention though that Kobe Bryant felt that he was at the top of his game in the 2003 season, so maybe that should have been included instead. As for his worst year, I've talked about how his last few were pretty bad, but back in his rookie year, he only started one game, played 15 minutes a night, and averaged 7 points that year because the thin Lakers head coach wasn't ready to give that much responsibility to an 18-year-old. The best season of Michael Jordan's personal career is also widely regarded as the greatest individual season of basketball in the history of the game, which was his 95 and 96 year where he won MVP, All-Star Game MVP, Finals MVP, the 72-10 record, and won the championship for his late father, while his worst season was his last with the Wizards. It may have been bad for his standards, but overall it was still pretty good. He averaged 20 points a game and still shattered nearly every record in the book for what a player at his age did. In Kevin Durant's worst year, it was very similar to LeBron. He came into the league as a top pick, averaged 20 points a game, and the team wasn't great, so they finished with a 20-62 record. KD did all he could in year one, and thankfully he never had a year worse than this. His best season was probably 2014 for the Thunder. Personally, I think he may have been playing his best basketball for the Warriors, but his best season as an individual was definitely the year he won the league MVP, a scoring title, and helped his team to the Western Conference Finals. Shaq's best year of his career was without a doubt the 1999 and 2000 season. It was where he won his only MVP, LA won the title that year, and he dominated on the court. Just think about it, with other perimeter guys, there was a number of ways they could beat you. But with Shaq, you knew he was gonna back you down on the post every possession, and there was just nothing you could do about it. Then of course, his worst was his last with the Celtics. That was full of injuries, bad stats, and you know it's bad when it's the year that he knew it was time to retire. Kyrie Irving, on the other hand, undoubtedly had the best season of his career in 2016 when the Cavs won their title. He was at the top of his game, and it's weird. He only played 53 games in the regular season and didn't make a single All-NBA team. But the playoffs come around and he entered God mode and really put up performances that gained everyone's respect around the league. His worst year that he was fully healthy for, I mean, I'm not even going to include any of his Nets years as healthy just because he's barely played. So that first year in Boston would probably be it. All the hard work to get his reputation to where he did was kind of ruined after he got there. He stunted the growth of the young guys, messed up the team's chemistry, missed the postseason, proved he wasn't a good leader, and kind of gave up on the team. Wilt Chamberlain's best season, of course, was when he averaged 50, and even though his worst was also his last, at 36 years old, he still managed to make the All-Star team and averaged 13 points, 18 rebounds on 72% shooting for the year. And even in that year, he helped his team to the NBA Finals, even though they lost. The best year of Russell Westbrook's NBA career was his first averaging a 30-point triple-double, because it was also when he won his MVP and led the league in scoring. And his worst wouldn't even be his rookie season. It would probably be this past one with the Lakers, because like Kyrie Irving, he kind of ruined his reputation in one year. It was never great to start, and it only headed downhill after he left OKC, but it's never been worse than it is right now based on everything that's happened thanks to him being on the Lakers. And speaking of point guards, Magic Johnson had his best year back in 1986 and 87 because he was able to do it all. League MVP, led the league in assists, averaged a career high in points, win Finals MVP, and beat the Boston Celtics in the finals, making it without a doubt one of the best seasons by a player in NBA history. While his worst, of course, would have to be in 1996, the one year he came back from retirement. He mostly came off the bench and was a shell of his former self. He did consider playing more seasons, but after seeing how that year played out, he just decided to call it quits. As for Chris Paul, this one may be controversial, but I think I may say the best season of his career was last year for the Suns when they made the finals. He's always made all his teams better, and in years past, he's even led the league in steals and assists in the same season. But to bring a team from not making the playoffs at all to the NBA Finals, with him being the only main change on the roster, is really hard to beat. And it's crazy to say, but CP3 has never really had a bad year in the league. His worst, or just his least best, would probably be his rookie season on the Hornets. Bill Russell is another guy who who never really had a bad year in the league. And in fact, almost every single year of his career was legendary. His best though would have to be 61 and 62, because it was the year that Wilt averaged 50 and Oscar Robertson averaged a triple-double. But Bill Russell won the MVP that year and his Celtics won the championship, with him putting up 18 and 23, which compared to those other guys was nothing. But his leadership is the stat that doesn't show up that really won him the award. And in his worst season, well, you'd probably say that was his last year in the league, where he averaged 9 points and 19 rebounds a night. But even in his last year, he won another championship, beating a prime Wilt Chamberlain and the Lakers for it. Now fast forward to today, and Nikola Jokic is the best big man in today's game. His worst year is definitely his first, and in it, coming into the league, the Nuggets were starting Kenneth Faried at center over him. But it didn't take long for Jokic to find his way as a starter. When he did though, he did only average 10 points and 7 rebounds, which is a huge difference from his best season, which is this past one in 2022, where he won his second straight MVP and kind of single-handedly led the Nuggets, who were missing their second and third best players, into the playoffs. Damian Lillard has had some big up and downs in his career so far. Now honestly, I would have counted this season as the worst of his career based on his reputation, skill level now, how his game slowed down a little, and where his team finished off. But he barely played, which did save him because they were on just about the same pace even when he was playing. But with that said, I'll say his rookie year was the worst because it was the only other time he missed the playoffs in his career. And we can't blame him for that, but he's had a pretty great career so far, so that was our only option. While his best season had to have been 2019 with The Shot, where the Blazers also made it to the Western Conference Finals. And speaking of big ups and big downs, that may describe no one better than Allen Iverson. His all-time best season was in 2001, and he did it all that year. He won league MVP, led the NBA in steals, led the NBA in scoring, and made the NBA Finals with a terrible team. As for his worst year, it would probably have to be 2008 and 9, where he got traded to the Pistons, was starting to fall out of the rotation, so he was going to get moved to the bench, but he said if that was the case, he would rather just not play, so he didn't for the rest of the year. Kawhi Leonard hasn't had many down moments in his career, but he did have a slow start, meaning his worst season was when he was a rookie. He made a big impact defensively, but on offense, he wasn't nearly all there yet. As for his best year, I don't need to go any further than to say it was that Raptors season. It's also surprising to go back and remember that Anthony Davis's worst overall year was his rookie year. Not because it was his worst, but just for the fact that he only averaged 13 points and 8 rebounds and didn't win Rookie of the Year, because instead it went to Damian Lillard. AD just had a big adjustment period, and by year 2 he was set. His best overall season though was 2020, when he won the title with LeBron, one of the only years he managed to stay semi-healthy. Larry Bird had his best season back in 85 and 86, where he did it all. A 67 and 15 team record, 3-point contest champion, league MVP, finals MVP, and NBA champion, where his team only lost 3 games in the postseason. Plus he averaged 26, 9, 7, and 2 on what was an unstoppable overall year for him. His worst season though, without injuries, is hard to say, seeing that he was an all-star every single year of his career, aside from the one where he only played 6 games. But his worst was definitely 90 and 91. After he had back surgery, he was healthy enough to play again, but he was just never the same player on the court, and all of his numbers dropped, and it was the beginning of the end of his career. Donovan Mitchell's another guy who really hasn't had a bad year yet. As a rookie, he came in putting up 20 a game and took over in the playoffs, but just because he was a rookie, we'll say that was his worst. And his best had to have been 2020 and 21, because it was his best statistically, he was an all-star, and it was the only other year he made the second round. Then we'll end things off with a few rapid-fire players. Tim Duncan's best year was his 2003 MVP season, where he won a title, and his worst was his last year in the league. Scottie Pippen's first year was his worst, and his best was probably 93 and 94 when he took over after MJ retired. Curry's best was 2016, obviously, and his worst was his rookie year. Giannis's worst was his rookie year, and his best was his MVP and Defensive Player of the Year season. And James Harden's worst was his first, and his best was his MVP year. And what their best and worst years were. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next video.